It wasn't until the pandemic, y'all, the panini, that I was forced to sit down and confront myself and to really get to the root and bottom of who are you and what do you want to do? And baby, the rest is history. Hey love bugs! Welcome back to my channel. If you are new, hi, hello, welcome to the channel. And if you have not already done so, please be sure to hit the subscribe button so you can join the fam, because we're over here trying to do things. We're trying to build a community. We want all the wonderful, lovely people to be here so that we can celebrate in our greatness, okay? But anyway, you're probably wondering, I'm begging for things and I'm not even telling you what we're here for. So let me tell you what we're here for. We are here to talk about my transition journey. So we're going from gender dysphoria to gender euphoria, okay? And it was a journey, okay? So I want to be sure that I fill you in on all the tea so you can understand how this girl right here got here, okay? It was quite a journey, so I'm just gonna give you, I had something prepared in terms of like an outline and things I wanted to cover, but girl, it deleted itself. It went ahead and took its own sabbatical and left. So I think that's my sign to wing it. That's my sign to just freelance this and, you know, be the chaotic me that I always am, okay? So please bear with me, because for the day oneers, for the people who've been around for a while, y'all know I love to go on a tangent. You know I love to ramble. You know I love to get off topic and back on. And we're gonna try to mitigate that and minimize that as much as possible, but it ain't gonna work, y'all. We're gonna be a hot mess. So we're gonna try and keep a little bit of structure to this, and how we're gonna start things off is we're gonna give you a definition of gender dysphoria. For anyone that's not familiar, I know that my trans girlies are definitely gonna be very familiar with what gender dysphoria is, but for anyone that's just curious and doesn't have an understanding of what gender dysphoria is, we will go over the definition. So here it is. So we're gonna get our definition from the American Psychiatric Association, and we're gonna take it from the top. So the term transgender refers to a person whose sex assigned at birth, i.e. the sex assigned at birth, usually based on external genitalia, does not align their gender identity, i.e. one's psychological sense of their gender. Some people who are transgender will experience gender dysphoria, which refers to psychological distress that results from an incongruence between one's sex assigned at birth and one's gender identity. Though gender dysphoria often begins in childhood, some people may not experience it until after puberty or much later. That is the general definition of gender dysphoria, just so that we all understand what we're talking about. So now I'm going to jump into my journey. We're going to start with childhood, and I think that a lot of people who are trans know a feeling of not identifying with who you're being told you are. And sometimes you have a pivotal moment in your childhood. Sometimes it may not be in your childhood, as the definition indicated. Sometimes it may come to you later at life. There is a whole Reddit dedicated to people who transition later in life. It may not mean that they didn't know that they were dysphoric or that they didn't know that they were trans, but a lot of it is rooted around just societal expectations and things that prevent them from being able to fully blossom into the person that they truly are and make that transition until later in life. Technically, I would consider myself someone that transitioned later in life, as I really began my physical transition about 4 years ago. So your girl hasn't really been looking like this for a long time, considering that I'm 39, but I think that there's always been a part of me that has identified as a girl, a female, a woman. So let's jump to the childhood. So as a child, I think initially, to start as a very young child, I don't think that there were any glaring ideas or things in my head for the first 3 or 4 years of my life that made me have any kind of inkling or thought that I didn't identify with who I was being told I was as a male. I was just a normal, you know, normalcy is subjective, but I was a normal child. Like, I enjoyed playing child games. I was friendly. I had a zest for life, you know? But I think it was around maybe the kindergarten, the first grade, like once we really started to get into elementary school and things became a lot more centered around gender, you know, dividing up into boys over here, girls over here, or this is for boys, this is for girls kind of situation, and all of the social pressures of being a little boy and what was expected of me. I think that that is when I started to feel uncomfortable with the things that were demanded of me, uncomfortable with being in spaces with other boys, just feeling a sense of disconnect. I always felt a lot more comfortable with the girls, and you know, as a child, that's not really something that I feel like I had a firm grasp of understanding that, oh, there's a certain level of comfort with the girls because I feel that's how I identify. I didn't have a grasp of that. I just knew that there was an ease in terms of being with the girls. There was something that I felt like I didn't have that they had that I wanted. But in terms of fully conceptualizing that and understanding exactly what that was, I had no clue. But I just had a lot of girlfriends in terms of just friends that were girls. I always hung out with the girls. I related to the topics that they wanted to talk about, you know, the heartthrobs and playing, you know, the little hand games and jumping rope and doing all the things. Skipping it, girl. I was doing all of that, and I felt comfortable in that space. And as a small child, you know, kindergarten, first, even maybe second grade, I didn't really run into any issues in terms of bullying or being made to be seen different. Nothing drastic. I mean, every so often, you know, people will question, well, why are you playing with the dolls instead of playing with the army men? Or why are you doing this instead of that? And I think it does, over time, for me as a child, made me feel a little bit uncomfortable about being myself, because I was a rule follower. I was someone that loved being a part of something, but also loved being obedient and I loved being praised for my behavior and my obedience by authority figures. So, you know, any kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Any kind of inference, maybe is the word I'm looking for, from an authority figure of, you know, me acting in a way that was not considered normal, I felt uneasy. So I would quickly like try to get back on status quo. And I kind of navigated my childhood like that for the first few years in grade school. Now, there was a pivotal moment in my childhood in the 4th grade with a PE teacher that made me feel so uncomfortable with myself and really, I think, ignited the dysphoria. I was in a PE class and we were naturally divided, boys and girls, because there was just a different performance expectation of the boys versus the girls. And I remember feeling extremely uncomfortable with going with the boys, participating in activities with the boys, and my PE teacher took notice of this and proceeded to admonish me and make me feel bad about not performing to a certain standard like a young boy should be performing, and made me feel just terrible about myself, to the point where it was noticeable enough to my mom when she picked me up that she knew there was a problem, and she was persistent in making sure that she got out of me what it was that I was experiencing, what was making me feel the way that I was feeling. And she had some words with the PE teacher through a meeting with the principal, the teacher, and you know, she got to the bottom of it and really made that PE teacher apologize for the way that she made me feel, but nonetheless, the damage was done. Now I felt weird about myself. I felt down on myself. I didn't feel like I could comfortably be who I wanted to be without being chastised or criticized. So I kind of started to go into a shell of myself. I mean, of course, as a kid, I still did some of the kid things. I would play tag, but I felt like it was getting to a point, especially in the late elementary school years and as we moved into junior high school, that it definitely was a hyper focus on gender and gender expression, how you presented yourself, how you moved. And I naturally always had a feminine flair about me. I think there was just things that I just didn't identify with in terms of maleness. And it was always spotlighted by someone that was looking to bolster themselves up at the expense of others. So, you know, I was an easy target. It's easy for people to pick on me to gain clout and notoriety with their peers. So that happened quite often. I was particularly bullied by boys, way more than I was by girls. So I think that from a very young age, I had an uneasiness when it came to dealing with males and being in large groups of boys and men. I just didn't feel comfortable and never felt safe. I think that's the word to use, safe. My safety never felt like it was a priority in spaces with men. So I kind of just started to be a lot more introspective and internalize a lot of my feelings. I think my room was my sanctuary. So, you know, that was the place and space for me to be expressive. I would do things like put shirts on my head and make shirts like dresses. Sometimes I would sneak into my mom's closet and I would like try on her clothes, and I would like look at her makeup and accessories and just kind of float into a fantasy land, of a feminine fantasy land in which I could unapologetically express myself with in these ways without being chastised. So that was like late elementary school years, moving into junior high school years. I did a lot of that. I did a lot of staying to myself and being in my space, fantasizing about a feminine version of myself, basically. Moving into high school was pretty rigorous for me. So academically, I just was already struggling to keep up with a highly competitive academic program and keeping up with the expectations of just being an adolescent that wants to appease their parents by going to a good school. Getting into a program, going to school, getting a college education, like that was what was the priority at that time. So I didn't really have time to think about like my expression. Anyone that knew me in high school knew that I was very, very strange in the sense that I was very introspective. Like, I was social, I got around, I talked to people, but at the same time, there was just a mystery about me in terms of just like, I would wear a hoodie all the time. Like, I had this Gap swishy, like windbreaker hoodie that I would wear every day. I swear to God, I would wear that hoodie so much, and it was just like a security blanket. It was oversized, so I felt like I could put it on and I could just kind of, it was like an invisible cloak, if you will. I could put it on and people just wouldn't pay me any mind. But people always noticed me because I was different than what the masses were doing. You know, everyone that was trying to do the things that were trending. For me, the things that were trending in terms of the boys didn't interest me. The stuff that was trending for the girls is what interested me, but I couldn't safely express myself in that way without feeling like I would be chastised, I would be ostracized, all things that I was petrified of experiencing as a child, right? Also, I started to grow my hair during this time. So my experience with growing my hair, it started from my discomfort with going to the barbershop. I hated going to get my hair cut, and I tried to swing the narrative in a way where it was just like, I just didn't enjoy getting haircuts. The fact of the matter is, I was uninterested in the experience of going to the barbershop and being in that space because, again, this was a large space this was the space that was largely male, that I just didn't feel safe or comfortable in. The topics, the energy, I think I just felt like I don't identify with these men. I don't identify with this experience. I just feel uncomfortable. I feel like I shouldn't be in this space because it doesn't feel like authentically me, right? So I did have the courage to just ask my parents if it were okay if I would grow my hair, because I just didn't enjoy getting haircuts. And they did allow me to grow my hair. And that was the first little taste of something that I felt like I could have comfortably do. At the time, it was kind of popular for both girls and guys to grow their hair. So I could grow my hair and I could have longer hair, still feel some semblance of safety, but have that euphoric feeling of having long hair and just feeling a bit more feminine. And I often would be confused for a girl at that time. People would run their fingers through my hair to be like, is it real? I mean, people would be like, are you a boy or are you a girl? Kind of situation. So it was weirdly affirming and satisfying to me as someone who really wanted to dip and dabble a bit in femininity, to be mistaken as a girl from time to time. I never really like shared that with anyone, but internally I was happy. So it's at this point in high school where I feel like I'm not sure if this is just normal development, as you know, normal adolescence and normal experimentation, puberty, if you will. I was a little bit confused as to if this is normal or if this is abnormal. Judging by how everyone around me was acting and moving, I felt like this is probably abnormal, so I'm just gonna internalize this and keep it to myself. And moving on, now we are in college, right? In college is when I felt like I'm out of my parents' house. I am on my own. I have the space and the opportunity to be able to experiment a bit more, but instead of experimenting with expression in terms of how I presented myself, I experimented with sexuality. So I decided to date a girl. I've only ever dated one girl, and it was very short-lived. It was very much like we were best girlfriends, but I did do it just to see what it would be like, and I realized pretty quickly, nah, not attracted to her. I feel nothing when I kiss this girl. I really just like hanging out with her. I like shopping. I like, you know, talking about movies and things like that, but any kind of like intimacy or anything that was, I should have been feeling some sense of something else, I just wasn't feeling for her at all. So that's when I came to grips, and I mean, I had kind of started to have some thoughts of attraction to men in high school, but like I said, I was very just like introspective and very just like to myself and not really in that headspace in high school. Maybe my hormones just hadn't kicked in a lot yet at that point, but by college, baby, they were kicked in. I was looking at the men's, all right? I was like, yes, 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 yes. I'm looking at them, I'm looking at them, I'm looking at them. On the sneak tip, but I'm looking at them because I don't want to get beat up, because, you know, especially the kind of men that I was attracted to. I was attracted to men that were obviously more masculine. I won't say obviously, because our attractions are as wide as space. Ouch. As wide as space. So, you know, in terms of my attractions were to masculine men. I generally liked bigger guys. I generally just like all the, just give me all of that masculine toxicity, right? So, I had my eyeballs peeled, and I did date I did date in college. I don't think I actually dated any guys while I was in school. Once I dropped out and things kind of settled in a bit with my friend group, I did actually end up dating a good friend and then a few other men over the course of my young adult years. But I always still felt like I'm dating these men and I'm getting a bit more comfortable in my femininity, but it still was to a point. like I still didn't cross the threshold of fully going into feminine mode. I felt like there was a sense of androgyny, like I would wear female clothes, but I would still present myself male enough where there was a feminine flair and energy about me, but I didn't fully go the distance in terms of just presenting female, right? So I went to New York, had a great time in New York. I did all the things, and I think I dabbled a bit more in my New York years in my femininity. So I played with makeup, I played with feminine clothing, but still, it was always just to a limit. I always felt like I'm just a very feminine gay guy. But here's the thing, y'all. Here's the thing. I didn't feel like my authentic self as a gay male when I was in gay spaces, and even when I was like engaging with gay men. I just didn't feel attracted to a lot of gay men. I mean, obviously aesthetically I would look at some of the gay men and they serve in body, girl. So I mean, I'm attracted to the male physique, but when it gets to the core of it, like I was not attracted to, in terms of companionship, to gay men. I just wasn't. And I was not finding my footing in the dating space for that reason. In hindsight now, I know that I was not finding my footing in that space because, baby, they weren't attracted to me. I would go out and I would do okay. I was still cute, you know, but nothing like now, which we'll get to later. But I don't feel like I was attractive to gay men because they're looking at me and my energy. Even a femme gay boy is still attracted to gay men. It was beyond that. I think that the energy that I was naturally exuding was womanhood that I didn't realize that I actually was exuding. So it made it complex for me dating wise, and it really took a toll on my self-esteem, I think. I really got to a place where I just felt like I wouldn't find love, I wouldn't find happiness, I don't feel comfortable in my skin, and we really had some dark moments over the course of my young adulthood, you know. I definitely dabbled with, I think I talked about in a vlog, but I'll talk about it here too. I definitely was struggling with an eating disorder. I also just struggled with depression, anxiety quite a bit over the course of my young adulthood, and I definitely struggled with abusing alcohol. Like, I don't necessarily think that I was an alcoholic, but I definitely used alcohol as a coping mechanism. And not to get too heavy, I won't go too deeply into my experience, but I definitely did have an experience with, I don't want to say the word because I'm not sure if YouTube will, but I tried to unalive myself unsuccessfully, thanks to a really good friend. Shout out to Michelle. And yeah, it was just a dark time. Like, as you can see, like, my energy is going low because it really was a dark time for me. And I'm grateful to be on the other side of that, to be here today, being able to share this journey with you. But it was dark times, girl. It was really dark times in terms of just trying to figure out exactly who I am and how to get to the other side, how to get to that person, right? I think that is not a trans exclusive experience. I think everyone struggles to find their place and space in this world. You're trying to learn who you are and what your purpose is. I think it's just amplified for trans people because we have to overcome the obstacle of gender dysphoria before we can even do anything else. You gotta get through the gender dysphoria. And it wasn't until, to be quite honest with you, y'all, like, even in my early 30s, I did a lot of work on myself, but it still always came back around to being in the same mindset, same space, and having some sense of like unhappiness about myself and my life, it wasn't until the pandemic, y'all, the panini, that I was forced to sit down and confront myself and to really get to the root and bottom of who are you and what do you want to do? And baby, the rest is history. Here we are now. Over the past 5 years, I have done a significant amount of work on myself to sit here loud and proud as a trans woman telling you this story. And I'm going to get into that right now. Okay, so we talked about the journey. We talked about childhood. We talked about adolescence. We talked about young adulthood. Boom. We got to the pandemic and we stuck in the house. I no longer could utilize socializing, alcohol, just all the distractions to not think about these things, not think about who I am, what do I want out of life, what's my purpose, what's my calling. I had to sit in this room, this very room, and confront those things. And I think it was very, very uncomfortable to start. Very uncomfortable. Like, I just didn't want to do it. I didn't want to. Anytime there were moments of just like sitting in here and having to think about life, I'd be like, let me find some wine. And I can't actually tell you what broke me out of this cycle, what made me say, you know what, girl, sit down and start writing some of these things out, start having these conversations with yourself. I honestly think it was a few friends that I met through playing some online games that really got those juices flowing, really started to make me think about things differently, saw things in me that I didn't see in myself. That's what it was. That's what it was. So another shout out to the Golden Girls, because they played a very significant role in me beginning to see some things about myself that I couldn't see in myself. I had become so accustomed to suppressing my authentic self, my authentic thoughts, that I couldn't identify things about myself that other people could see. Is that crazy or what? It is, in case you needed the answer. It's very crazy, but not uncommon. And not just a trans person exclusive experience. But here we are now. So over the past few years, these are some of the things that I've done to get here in this moment. I started to write out my feelings. Anytime thoughts would cross my mind, I would take out a notebook and I would write it out, right? How I was feeling in that moment, how things that I wanted to do, how I wanted to express myself in terms of my appearance, in terms of how I move, how I talk. I wrote everything out. And that was very cathartic for me. I'm a writer. I feel like writing is very intimate to me. And by writing things out, I felt like I was able to feel those things a little more deeply than I can with it just being in my head. So for me, the first thing was the unleashing, the unloading of all of these thoughts that I had going on in my head, to then shed light and bring awareness to these thoughts. Oh, these are all the things that I'm experiencing, that I'm feeling. And it wasn't until I started dumping these things out of my head that I could finally get to a place where I felt like, let's talk about this gender identity. Let's talk about it. Meaning I have to give some credit to just it being a lot more openly discussed in pop culture in general. I was actually at the time watching Pose with my parents, mind you. They watched Pose with me, and it really started to spark some things in my head in terms of like, wow, I'm seeing myself in some of these characters, and it's not something that I even considered or thought about for the entirety of my life. Like the idea and the thought of being a trans woman was like, huh? I remember the first time that I actually processed like what a trans woman is watching America's Next Top Model, Isis, season 11, and watching how she was tormented by some of those nasty, vile girls really left an impression in my head. I didn't necessarily identify, I didn't see Isis and see myself in her in that moment, because at that time I was very disconnected from myself. Moments of introspection didn't happen. I was living life fast during that time. So I didn't look at her and identify myself, but I definitely did look at her experience, and it left an impression on my head. So that when I would revisit the idea of being a trans woman later in my life, that experience would come rushing back to my head and would mortify me, simply mortify me. But moving back to the work that I put in once I had the revelation. So obviously unloading. The next order of business for me was making sense of it. So I got a therapist, and the therapist was a very, very pivotal role for me. I don't think I would be here today if I didn't take that initiative to get the therapist. And make no mistake, I went through 4 or 5 therapists before I arrived at my current therapist that I really feel like I made some strides to get to where I am right now with. It was tough. It was tough, and I think that there were lots of moments in which I wanted to give up and just say, no one, they can't figure me out. They can't really chip through the armor, you know, so I might as well just stop trying. I might as well just stop trying. But I didn't, because I owed it to myself to be unapologetically who I was meant to be. And I did just that. Got the therapist. We started unpacking a lot of the things that I discussed that I experienced over the course of my childhood, and moving into adolescence. We went through all the things, and here we are, y'all. I'm so very excited and happy to be able to share this journey with you. Just a little sneak peek, if you made it this far, you will get another piece of content from me later this week on Thursday that will be another form of this journey. It'll be a lot more artistic and creative in terms of my expression, my recounting of this journey. It'll definitely have a bit more of an artistic flair, so stay tuned to that. But I'm gonna wrap this up because I think this is long enough, and I just wanted to sit down and tell the story. I know that I'm chaotic and it's probably all over the place, but that's on brand with the channel, okay? So you know I'm your favorite chaotic homegirl. Y'all know this at this point. So thanks so much for listening to me talk about my journey. If you are a trans woman and you have gone through a journey similar to this, or you have your own journey, I would love to hear it down below in the comments. I'm really enjoying connecting with you know, some of my subscribers. I'm getting new subscribers that are lovely, and I just love hearing your stories and just being able to connect with you all on that level. So I would love to hear some of your journeys, and if there's anything that I went through in my journey that you can relate to, let's chit chat and talk about it down below in the comments. If you are someone who is actively moving through your journey, I would also like to know about that and to be able to just be supportive of your transition and your journey. So hit me up in the comments down below for that as well. And if you like the video, please be sure to hit the like button. It helps me out so much to get me out there to the algorithm so we can continue to grow, y'all, okay? And if you haven't already, I'll wait, but go ahead and hit the subscribe button so that you can join the fam and you can have fun. You can have all the fun. Everything is not heavy, although I think for a topic like this, it was as light as it possibly could be, because your girl don't have a prim and proper bone in her body, okay? I'm always gonna be giving you all the hands, giving you all the hair throws and doing all the things, okay? Like, that's just who I am, and I can't help it, and I don't have to help it. That's the beauty of this. I can come on here and I can be unapologetically myself, and those who love it, and those who don't can click the X. Like, It's just as simple as that. It makes things so much easier, right? But anyway, now that I've rambled for an additional 2 minutes, we'll hop off of here and I will see you all later in the week.